Hull City's current fee restrictions, which free transfers should they be targeting on the transfer market? Hello there and welcome back to the HullCityFanCentral YouTube channel, where today I'll be going through 8 players or so that I have picked out to be some good fits for Hull City to target in the free transfer window. Of course, there's plenty of free transfers out there, so if you have any free transfers that you think Hull City should be signing that I don't mention in the video, let me know in the comments down below, and of course you can comment on some of the picks that I've chosen as well. Of course, some of them are a little bit more hypothetical than realistic, but I've gone for a bit of a mixed bag. Of course, that's the way that the free transfer market goes. Players can get desperate in wanting to play for clubs, and so they might be taking a bit of an easier deal on themselves closer towards the deadline. So these players could play for Hull City, even though some of them maybe it might be out of the realm of possibility. But we will have a look and we'll determine which one could be the best fit for Hull City in what they need. But before we go into that, we do have a little bit of transfer news surrounding Hull City, and it's to do with Abu Kamara. Now, we've reported that Abu Kamara could possibly be leaving Hull City this transfer window. There was a bit of interest from Portsmouth to obviously re-sign him. He was on loan there before, then he joined Hull City from Norwich on quite a long, healthy deal. But some interest is mounting up from Rangers, as Rangers are weighing up a move for Abu Kamara. It's reported that this fee that they would be obviously paying Hull City, considering Kamara is under contract, and it probably wouldn't be a loan deal. So the permanent transfer, the fee they are reporting would be a bit more of a reduced one, considering the Hull City's current financial situation on the face of things, and the fee restriction and all sorts. So it seems like that is not weighing into Hull City's favour too much, the possibility of an Abu Kamara sale, but hopefully Hull City don't sell him for less than what we need for him and what he is currently valued at, because that wouldn't be good in the slightest. So, let's break into some picks that I've got. So, first of all, start off with Barry Bannan. Now, we do obviously know who Barry Bannan is. Of course, he's been at Sheffield Wednesday since 2015. So, 5 years or so at 10 years or so, sorry, my math's a bit off there. 10 years or so at Sheffield Wednesday. So, Barry Bannan could be a big free transfer target for Hull City. Of course, we don't really know his current landscape of things. Whether he's going to leave Sheffield Wednesday or whether he's going to stay. We don't fully know what's happening there, considering all of the issues that Sheffield Wednesday are having in their own right. But Barry Bannan would be a nice pick for Hull City. He is a commanding midfielder who can get a bit of creativity going, can also provide a few goals and a few opportunities moving up the field, but he's a very key player to have in that midfield. And if Hull City are going to lose a few midfielders this transfer window, with maybe Gustavo Puerta and that deal not fully coming through due to the fee restriction, and of course an Alzate could be possibly moving out, maybe going to Sheffield United or elsewhere. We could be in the case for another midfielder, a bit more of a commanding midfielder, and Barry Bannan would be that perfect fit. Across the past 10 years with Sheffield, across his career, in the Championship, he's played 374 games in the Championship, so he knows this league. We know him as playing against him, and whenever we've played against him, he's always been that sort of little bit of a pain in the sort of the side of Hull City. But of course, them 374 appearances in the Championship, 18 goals, 51 assists. So it's not a bad sort of marker from a midfielder, someone who's played sort of that central midfield, that commanding central midfield for a big stretch of time. And of course, current Sheffield Wednesday captain, so he wouldn't be coming in sort of as someone to be pushed over, would he? But it's whether the deal would materialise and what it would be case of what is going on at Sheffield Wednesday, which is a big question mark at the moment. So Barry Bannan is a big question mark. He would be a good fit. He would be a good deal if it could happen. It's just a case of whether it would happen. Of course, him still, I believe, being on contract at Sheffield Wednesday. And of course, the ongoing situation that is there. So Barry Bannan is my first possibility. Next one seems like a very, very good possibility, and it seems like quite a few teams are sort of sniffing around him, and that is Tyrese Dolan, of course, formerly now of Blackburn Rovers, was at Blackburn Rovers since 2020 till this past season, and he's quite a sort of prominent player up in the attack for Blackburn Rovers. I believe this last season he got 13 goal contributions within the season. Of course, playing nearly 200 games in the Championship across his sort of time period. 23 goals, 21 assists during that time. Of course, he's not been a key starting player for majority of that time, but he can play across the full front line. His main priority is a right winger, but he can play as a left and he can play sort of up top if need be. He is maybe a bit more of an expensive signing, but if you are looking to get rid of an Abu Kamara who's probably taking quite a bit more on the wages, and a Abda Shamer, whether that's going to be a loan out, whether it's going to be a permanent out, of course that will contribute to the wage factor. So if we can get shifted on some wage aspects, he maybe would be a right signing for Hull City. Certainly a 1-year deal would be fantastic. A couple of year deal probably would be the more in the realm of possibility, but with many Championship squads looking out for him, and maybe he could fetch a bit of better wage per week deal somewhere else. It's a bit of another one where you're not 100% sure whether it is going to happen, but it's certainly Hull City should be sniffing around this one, as every Championship club should be. Certainly a key player, only 23 years old, and he's going to contribute some aspects of goals for whoever he plays for, and whether that be Hull City, that would be a big bonus considering the lack of goals that is in this squad currently, and of course last season. Another player who might contribute with some goals, and that's a bit of a journeyman in Jordan Rhodes. So Jordan Rhodes, of course, free transfer. Last club he was at was Blackpool, of course. A little bit of a link there, but of course, free transfer, so it's down to him and his sort of agency where he goes to. Of course, there might be a link between him and sort of current Hull City striker I've forgotten his name off the top of my head. Kyle Joseph, there we go. Kyle Joseph could be a bit of a link there. Could get agent Kyle Joseph on the case to bring him in. Would be an interesting one. He's, of course, played 381 games in the Championship, 123 goals and 25 assists during that time, so it's nothing too shabby. It's working on average about 1 goal per 3 games or something like that, which isn't too bad. A big question mark on it though is he's 35 years old. We've seen in the past what's happened with bringing in them sort of older and experienced strikers, attacking players, and how sort of they pan out. Of course, it worked a bit last season with João Pedro, and we saw sort of a good aspect of João Pedro, and he's fetched on to go out and sort of play and be a bit of a bigger player. But then we saw it didn't work with Billy Sharp, so it's a bit of a hit and miss. With the free transfer case, you're not really losing too much because there's no fees attached to it. You're only paying the wages, and for him at the moment, his wages wouldn't be that high. Of course, he would be making the step up to the Championship, but we know he can do it. He's played enough games in the Championship, and that upgrade to the Championship might see him sort of willingly downgrade his fees a little bit on his wage to, of course, play a bit of a higher level. But I said he's a bit of a journeyman. He's been around the block: Ipswich, Oxford, Rochdale, Brentford, Huddersfield, Blackburn, Middlesbrough, Sheffield Wednesday, Norwich, Blackpool, Mansfield. He's been all over the shop, and certainly over the past few years he's been going around on free transfers and loan deals, so certainly could be a big, not a big signing for Hull City, but one that could pay dividends if the Hull City can pull it off, and he can sort of produce something in a bit of a lightning in the bottle moment. Another one we'll talk about is Cyrus Chrissy, of course, formerly a Hull City player, and we could have a bit of a reunion with him. He is a free transfer at the moment after leaving Swansea City this past season. Of course, we do know him for his 2 seasons under Hull City after making the free transfer switch from Fulham to Hull City back in 2022. His first season as a Tiger went quite well. He was quite impressive, working well with the attack, and especially down that right-hand side as the right wing-back under sort of a Rosinia regime. And then his second season, of course, after the injury case, it didn't go too well, and it seemed like he didn't do too well last season at Swansea City. Of course, another Championship proven player in his own right. but certainly would be possibly a bit of an upgrade down that right-hand side. If we can get him back to his sort of situation that we saw him in that first season at Hull City, well, that would be an absolute godsend to this squad, and it would be a big addition to that right-back slot with however Sergei Yukirevich wants to play it. The question is, would Hull City be wanting to go after this one after seeing what he was like in that second season for Hull City and seeing what he was like at spells last season for Swansea City? Yes, it wasn't the best of seasons last season, but maybe taking a flyer on him to sort of boost up that defensive role in Hull City, well, that maybe wouldn't be too bad. But Cyrus Christie, certainly one that will be an interesting one if Hull City do go back there after cutting ties, as I say, in 2024. Another player that is linked with Hull City, and that Jonjo Shelvey. Of course, he's currently at Hull City's training ground, working with them to gain his fitness back, and was part of that 2-0 behind closed doors friendly loss to Lincoln City. Of course, he is a free transfer, which means Hull City can sign him, and without too many games in the past sort of couple of years, Hull City are working to get his fitness back up. Would be a free transfer. Of course, last playing for Burnley. I think he only played 4 games last season, of course, in the second half of last season for Burnley. But he's been a bit around the shop since sort of leaving Newcastle for Nottingham Forest. He went from Newcastle to Nottingham Forest, and Nottingham Forest released him to go on a free transfer to Rizersspor. Rizersspor free transfer to another team in Turkey, which I can't pronounce, then another free transfer to Burnley. And during that sort of spell, he didn't get too much game time. Of course, a midfielder with a bit of experience about him, playing majority of his games in the Premier League, 278 of them in the Premier League, and only 72 in the Championship, but he's well versed with the English game. Of course, he's no stranger to grabbing the odd goal as well, or odd goal or assist, so he can help a little bit in the attack going forwards, but certainly someone that if his fitness is right and if he can get back up to that quality of a few years ago, well, he could be a big player, sort of week in, week out, maybe not playing every game, but maybe playing every other game in that midfield that could possibly need it, with maybe some players departing, as I've already mentioned. So Jonjo Shelvey, certainly one to keep an eye on. Of course, Hull City are already keeping an eye on him in their own training ground. Another interesting one I've picked up here, and that being Joshua King. Of course, we do know who Joshua King is. He's been linked with Hull City before. Similarly to Jonjo Shelvey, he's 33 years old, so getting on a little bit now. But of course, played a lot of games in the Premier League, 204 in the Premier League. He's played slap bang 100 games in the Championship, and during that time, only 6 goals in the Championship, 10 assists. Of course, is a bit of a loose one here, where he's not known too much for grabbing loads of goals, but when I think the goals come, they do come in sort of spurs. Like if he's on a sort of a good streak, or maybe grab a hat-trick in a game and a goal in the next game and sort of on. But when he's sort of not grabbing goals, there's going to be an extended period of time where he's not grabbing goals. Of course, he does provide a few goals every now and again. Say in the Premier League, 204 appearances, 53 goals, 17 assists. Across the Premier League, that's a goal every 4 games. It's not too bad. Of course, his Championship stats aren't looking the best, but of course, didn't have the best of times in the Championship with various different clubs, of course. Didn't do too well at Watford. I believe he was with them in the Championship, and various other clubs, Blackburn and so on. So certainly would be an interesting one. Of course, it would be a reunion. Of course, it was at Hull all the way back in 2012 on a loan deal from Man United, I believe it was back then. So certainly would be a reunion, of course, completely different Hull City, 13 years on, and a free transfer at it after leaving Toulouse just at the start of July, as all free transfers have happened. Would be a big fly, of course, just recently playing for Fenerbahce over in Turkey, playing European football with them. So would he be looking to come to Hull City? Of course, there is the link between Adrian, Fenerbahce, Turkey, and it didn't seem that Joshua King was that happy when he was sort of leaving Fenerbahce. So it's going to be a bit of an interesting one there. Whether that can sort of play into it in a positive or a negative factor, we're not 100% sure on that one. But I thought Joshua King was a bit of an interesting one. He's a free transfer. He's out there. It would be a bit of a miss for Hull City not to go out there and go and at least inquire about Joshua King making the free switch to Hull City. Another striker, I mean, the rest of this is all strikers now because we're doing the goals. But it's Mikel Antonio, another interesting one, of course. A big player for West Ham for 10 years now. Has just been released from West Ham, so he's a free transfer. It's unsure whether he'll be going back into another club or whether he's retired. I didn't find anywhere to say that he might be going into retirement. But of course, he's known to sort of occasionally do the odd bit of punditry and stuff. 35 years old now. He's getting on a bit, of course. A striker who can certainly produce something. 268 games in the Premier League, 68 goals, 36 assists, 142 games in the Championship, 28 goals, 30 assists, not too bad. Of course, a big stay in sort of the English game for quite a while. As I say, played a lot of games for West Ham, has been at Nottingham Forest, Sheffield Wednesday, Reading, Colchester, Southampton, various other clubs like that, and certainly would be a nice addition to the Tigers. It's whether it would happen for him, for his sake, but him coming for a free transfer to Hull City, I wouldn't say no to it. Of course, he is quite that bullyish sort of striker. Would play as sort of a nice contrast to Kyle Joseph in that aspect, and maybe a nice sort of contrast in some sort of essence to a possible Friggin who could be coming to the Tigers. Of course, we're not mentioning that in this video because it's not a free transfer, but certainly would be an interesting one nonetheless. Another one a little bit similar to Joshua King, a little bit out there. Would he make the switch to Hull City? Is Hull City maybe a downstep for him? Of course, so many years with West Ham. It would be a bit of an interesting one, but I thought I'd just chuck his name out there as a possibility. The final one, and it's the one that every Hull City fan's been waiting for me to say, is Ollie McBurnie. Of course, Ollie McBurnie's been on Hull City's radar for a little bit of time now. 29 years old. I believe that he is one of the younger players that I've mentioned in this video, other than Tyrese Dolan. So of course a lot of free agents are getting on a bit because they're not in their sort of heyday anymore. But Ollie McBurnie, only 29 years old, so still got a little bit of time left in him. Of course, would be a free transfer after leaving Las Palmas. Of course, Las Palmas are still interested in re-signing him, so we'll keep up to date on that one as I do on the channel. Of course, formerly of Sheffield United, where he played, I believe, 5 seasons there on sort of a big role there. Wasn't maybe the star man of Sheffield United during that time, but certainly wasn't shy to a goal. 125 championship appearances, 44 goals during that time, 8 assists, played 96 games in the Premier League, 13 goals, 6 assists. So certainly not a stranger to a goal or two, would help massively in the striking department for Hull City. Certainly Hull City are interested in this one, and it's the case of where Ollie McBurnie wants to go. I think he's had quite a few different teams and a few different sort of options laid out to him, whether he does stay at Las Palmas, whether he does come back to England. It's sounding like he might want to come back to England, whether the deal is right for him, who knows. But Hull City would be a good fit for him, would be a good fit for Hull City, and it's a free transfer at the end of the day. As I say, throughout all these ones, free transfers, Hull City can make them happen. It's whether the club wants to do it, it's down to the player as well. So it would be a very interesting case if any of these get pulled off. Of course, John Joe Shelby are likely one at the moment. Ollie McBurnie are likely one due to Hull City's commitment. Whether they'd go back and sort of rekindle things with Cyrus Christie and Josh King, of course, and maybe who knows what the situation is with Mikel Antonio and Barry Bannon, and of course, why not go in for Tyrese Dolan? So some 8 sort of big free transfers that Hull City could pull off. Of course, plenty more free transfers there out on the market. So let me know in the comments who you think Hull City should sign off the free transfer market. It could be one of the 8 that I've mentioned, or could be one of the numerous other ones. I mean, it could be an Abel Hernandez. Who knows? So I'll see you in the next video. Make sure you stay tuned on the channel by liking and subscribing. By doing that, you'll keep up to date on everything Hull City, transfer news, behind the scenes news, everything surrounding Hull City, as I will keep you up to date on everything Hull City, and I'll see you in the next video. So up the Tigers!